My name is Amanda. I am 32 years old, and I never thought a single birthday present could shatter the fragile peace I had built for my daughter and me. But that afternoon, in our modest Ohio apartment, it happened. The sunlight streamed through the thin curtains, painting stripes across the living room carpet, where balloons and half-inflated streamers still lingered from the small party we had thrown earlier. Lily, my 8-year-old daughter, still wore the unicorn headband she had insisted on keeping after her friends left her cheeks glowing with the flush of laughter and cake. We were exhausted, yet happy, and for a fleeting moment, I let myself believe we were safe from the ghosts of my childhood. Then came the knock on the door. I froze my hand, tightening on the dish towel because I knew that rhythm. A delivery man stood outside, holding a large box wrapped in expensive gold paper with a crimson bow tied with the precision of a jeweler's knot. "Special delivery for Lily Miller," he said with a professional smile. My stomach clenched. The label confirmed my worst suspicion. From Charles and Margaret, my parents. My pulse quickened. I had kept contact minimal for years. Protective walls built high after decades of abuse, gaslighting, and manipulation. Yet here they were invading the sanctuary I had carved out. Lily's eyes widened with pure childish excitement. "Mommy, it has my name on it," she squealed, bouncing on her toes. "Can I open it, please?" The innocent joy in her voice pierced me. I wanted to shield her, to throw the box in the trash, to send it back unopened, but I also could not bear to crush her happiness. My hands shook as I carried the parcel into the living room, setting it on the coffee table. I forced a smile. "Okay, honey, but let's be careful." She clapped and tore at the wrapping golden paper fluttering like falling leaves. The box beneath was sturdy, expensive, embossed with an emblem I did not recognize. Lily lifted the lid and gasped in delight. Inside was a doll. Not an ordinary toy, but an antique porcelain figure dressed in lace with glassy blue eyes that seemed to stare too intently. It looked like something pulled from a Victorian display case, beautiful but eerie. She reached in, cradling it with reverence, and for a moment I relaxed, convincing myself maybe, just maybe, my parents had chosen something purely thoughtful. Then everything shifted. As Lily hugged the doll to her chest, her small body stiffened. Her breath caught. The color drained from her face. Her eyes darted to me wide, terrified, as if she had seen something hidden from my adult sight. Her lips trembled. "Mommy, help me," she whispered, voice so fragile I almost did not hear. My heart stopped. The words sliced through me sharper than any knife. I rushed to her, prying the doll gently from her grip. It was heavier than it should have been, the porcelain torso oddly weighted. I turned it over and noticed the seam along its back, a line crudely glued as if resealed. With trembling fingers, I tugged at the lace, pried open the gap, and what spilled out turned my blood to ice. A folded photograph slid into my palm. It was a picture of Lily asleep in her bed, taken from inside our own apartment, proof someone had been watching us. Beneath the photo was a slip of paper in my mother's precise cursive. "We can protect her better than you ever could." My breath came in ragged gasps. My parents had crossed a line so grotesque it stole my voice. Lily clutched my arm, her eyes brimming with fear. I pulled her close, swallowing my panic, but inside I knew the truth. This was no gift. It was a weapon, and war had just begun. Life as a single mother was never what I envisioned for myself, but after leaving Ethan, my volatile ex-husband, survival became my guiding star. Our two-bedroom apartment on the edge of Columbus was far from glamorous, but it was a refuge. The walls were covered with Lily's drawings, unicorns, and rainbows taped crookedly over the peeling paint. The kitchen smelled perpetually of microwave popcorn and vanilla candles because I wanted the space to feel warm even when money ran thin. I worked long hours as a freelance editor, eyes glued to my laptop until late at night, chasing contracts that barely covered rent and utilities. But I chose this life deliberately because it meant I could be there every morning to walk Lily to school, every afternoon to pick her up, every night to read her stories until she fell asleep with her head on my shoulder. She was my anchor, my purpose, my proof that I was not doomed to repeat the horrors of my own childhood. When I think of childhood, I do not remember birthday cakes or family vacations. I remember the sting of leather across my back when my father, Charles, thought I spoke out of turn. I remember standing in the corner with aching legs for hours while my mother, Margaret, recited every one of my perceived failures like a prosecutor building her case. If I cried, she would hiss through clenched teeth, "Wipe those tears, Amanda, you are embarrassing us." When I succeeded, the joy was poisoned. A first-place ribbon in science fair was met with, "You should have aimed higher, the state competition was within reach." A new dress earned me a smile followed by, "It hides your flaws nicely." Nothing was ever unconditional. Love came wrapped in conditions, achievements, obedience, perfection. My father, a senior banking executive, ruled our household with spreadsheets and punishments. He logged my grades, my chores, my extracurricular activities, and when I stumbled in any column, the consequence came swift and merciless. My mother specialized in psychological cuts so sharp I did not recognize the bleeding until years later. She compared me relentlessly to cousins, to classmates, to imaginary daughters who would have been thinner, prettier, more obedient. Their favorite phrase when I tried to resist was, "You are imagining things, Amanda. We only want what's best." That phrase still echoes in my nightmares. Gaslighting was their daily language, making me question my own perception until I doubted reality itself. When I met Ethan in college, he seemed like rebellion and salvation combined. He was artistic, loud, unpolished, everything my parents despised. For the first time, I felt seen. We married young despite their sneering disapproval. At the wedding, my father handed me a check with a note that read, "For when reality sets in." My mother whispered while hugging me, "Artists starve, darling, but maybe you'll come back home sooner when you're hungry." I should have known that prophecy carried venom, but I was stubborn, desperate to carve a different path. The marriage unraveled faster than I admitted at the time. Ethan's charm soured into jealousy, his spontaneity into recklessness, his passion into anger. He lost jobs as quickly as he found them, leaving me to balance bills with frantic patchwork jobs. The final betrayal was his affair with a gallery owner discovered in the most humiliating way possible when he forgot to log out of his email on our shared laptop. Divorce papers followed, and so did nights of sobbing into a pillow while Lily slept unaware that her father had chosen someone else's gallery spotlight over his family. In those first months alone, I resisted every temptation to crawl back to my parents. They called with offers of rescue disguised as ultimatums. "We can pay for a bigger apartment if you move closer. We can cover Lily's school tuition if you let us help raise her." I knew their help came laced with shackles, so I refused, and every refusal widened the canyon between us. They sent occasional gifts, usually impersonal and pointed. A book on financial planning, a set of etiquette guides for young girls, expensive but irrelevant clothes. Most I intercepted before Lily could see them, spinning a white lie that Grandma and Grandpa had forgotten her birthday again. I would rather she think them absent than poisonous. And for a while it worked. Our lives found rhythm. Morning walks to school, weekend movie nights, scraped knees kissed better with Band-Aids printed with kittens. We were not rich, but we were free. Until today. Until the knock at the door and the doll with eyes that stared too long. Until Lily's terrified whisper. As I clutched that porcelain horror in my shaking hands, memories of my parents' control came rushing back. The punishments, the gaslighting, the endless message that I was never enough. And now they were aiming that poison at Lily. They wanted her to panic, to question me, to doubt her safety with me. This was not just manipulation. This was war declared with lace and porcelain. And I realized in that moment that survival was not enough. I would have to fight back. The morning of Lily's birthday began with pancakes shaped like hearts and sprinkled with powdered sugar, my feeble attempt at making up for the absence of a father or grandparents in her daily life. She bounced around the kitchen in her pajamas, reciting her guest list for the party later in the afternoon, only 5 classmates and 1 neighbor friend, but to her it was as grand as a royal ball. I had stretched my budget for weeks to afford the unicorn-themed decorations she had begged for and a cake from a small bakery across town, and as I hung the last paper streamer above our apartment window, I felt a quiet pride. We were doing fine, just the two of us. The party at the community park passed in a whirl of laughter. Lily and her friends chased Bubbles' smeared frosting on their cheeks and ran until their legs gave out. Other parents smiled politely at me, some offering help, others whispering about how young I looked to be raising a child alone. I ignored the sideways glances because Lily's joy drowned out everything else. As the sun dipped lower and the kids went home with goodie bags of dollar store trinkets, I held Lily's hand tightly, grateful that for a few hours her world was simple and carefree. Back at the apartment, we collapsed on the couch, the floor littered with wrapping paper from her friends' presents. Dolls puzzles a set of glitter pins, each gift received with squeals and hugs. I was gathering the mess into a trash bag when the knock came. Not loud, not soft, just precise. My stomach tightened because I knew without opening who had reached across the walls I had built. The delivery man shifted the weight of a large box in his arms, his clipboard ready. "Special delivery for Lily Miller," he said cheerfully. My throat closed as I scrawled a signature. The box gleamed with metallic wrapping paper, the kind you see in department store displays, and a ribbon tied with mechanical perfection. Lily's eyes widened, a gasp escaping her lips. "For me, Mommy?" she asked, her voice full of wonder. I nodded slowly, hiding the dread that coiled in my chest. The label confirmed it, from Charles and Margaret, my parents. For months they had been silent, no calls, no cards. I had dared to hope they had given up their pursuit, yet here was proof they were only waiting for a moment to strike. Lily clapped her hands together, bouncing on her toes. "Please, Mommy, can I open it now?" Her excitement was a knife twisting in me. I should have said no, should have hauled the glittering package straight to the dumpster, but the innocence in her eyes held me hostage. She deserved joy, not the weight of my history. I forced a smile and carried the box into the living room, setting it carefully on the table. "Let's open it together," I whispered, though my heart pounded like a drum. She tore at the paper with delighted shrieks, golden shreds fluttering across the carpet. The box beneath was a polished white chest with an embossed crest, foreign and ostentatious. She lifted the lid with reverence, and inside lay a porcelain doll, its dress a cascade of lace, its glass eyes unnervingly bright. Lily gasped in admiration. "It's so pretty, Mommy." I studied it with a shiver. The doll was unlike anything a child would choose. It was an adult's fantasy of wealth, fragile and cold. My mother's taste, without a doubt. I tried to steady my breathing as Lily lifted it into her arms, hugging it as if it were treasure. For a fleeting moment, I wanted to believe it was harmless. But then Lily stiffened. Her breath hitched. The smile drained from her face. She clutched the doll tighter, eyes darting toward me wide with a fear no 8-year-old should ever know. "Mommy, help me," she whispered, voice cracking. I lunged forward, prying the doll gently from her arms. It was heavier than expected, the torso oddly solid. Turning it over, I noticed a seam running along its back, poorly glued. My hands trembled as I pried it open, and a folded object slid into my palm. At first I thought it was a tag, but as I unfolded it, horror swept over me. A photograph. Lily asleep in her bed, her hair spread across the pillow, her small chest rising and falling. The angle was from inside our apartment, from her bedroom door. Someone had been there watching, documenting. My stomach lurched. Beneath the photo was a slip of paper written in my mother's familiar cursive. "We can protect her better than you ever could." The room tilted. Lily clung to my sleeve, eyes brimming with tears. I pulled her close, my mind racing. This was not a gift. This was a message. My parents had breached not only boundaries, but safety itself. They wanted me to know they could reach inside my home, that my daughter's sanctuary was no longer safe. And in that moment, as my heart pounded and Lily trembled in my arms, I realized the party was over. The war I had fled from had followed me here, wrapped in gold paper and tied with a bow. The doll sat on the coffee table like a sentinel of nightmares, its glassy eyes catching the dim light of our single lamp, and I could not bring myself to touch it again. My palms still tingled from the weight of it, from the icy realization that someone had crossed the threshold of our home while we slept. Lily pressed into my side, small fingers clutching my shirt so tightly the seams strained. Her whisper still echoed in my skull. "Mom, help me." She was trembling. Her breaths shallow, the innocence of her birthday shattered in seconds. I stroked her hair, forcing my voice steady. "It's okay, honey, I'm here." but inside I knew nothing was okay. I grabbed the doll again with hands that no longer shook from fear, but from rage. I pulled harder at the glued seam and more scraps slipped out. Another photo this time of Lily walking to school, her pink backpack slung over her shoulders, the shot taken from behind a tree near the corner. Then another of me unlocking the apartment door with groceries in my arms. My blood ran cold. They had been watching us for weeks, maybe months. At the bottom was another note written in that same cursive that haunted me since childhood. You can resist us, Amanda, but she belongs with family. You cannot keep her from her destiny. I crumpled the paper in my fist, my nails digging into my skin until crescents of pain grounded me. Destiny. That was their word, the same they had used on me when I was a teenager. Your destiny is to make us proud. Your destiny is to carry our name higher. My destiny, they meant, was to obey. And now they wanted to chain Lily with the same poisoned word. Lily's eyes searched mine, confused and frightened. Why did Grandma and Grandpa send me that mommy? Her voice cracked. Do they not like us? My throat closed. How could I explain to an 8-year-old the depth of cruelty her grandparents wielded? I crouched to her level, cupping her face. They want to scare us, honey. They want to make you think you need them more than me. But you are safe with me, I promise. She nodded slowly, though the doubt lingered in her eyes planted by their venom. That was the cruelty of it. The notes were not only meant for me, they were designed to wedge between us to make Lily question my love, my ability to protect her. It was psychological warfare dressed in lace. The phone rang, shrill and jarring. I jolted, nearly dropping the doll. Caller ID private number. I knew before answering. I put it on speaker because my hands were full with Lily clinging to me. Amanda. My father's voice boomed calm yet edged with menace. Did Lily enjoy her present? My stomach churned. What do you want? I snapped. We want what is best for her, my mother chimed in sweetly, though her tone dripped poison. She deserves security opportunities, things you can't provide. Stay away from us, I hissed. My father chuckled low and cold. You can't keep us away forever. You think you're strong, Amanda, but we know your weaknesses. We always have. If you keep her from us, you'll regret it. I hung up, my fingers numb. Lily had buried her face in my chest, tears dampening my shirt. Her tiny voice muffled. Why are they so mean, Mommy? Because they don't understand love, I whispered fiercely. But I do, and I will never let them hurt you. I shoved the doll back into the box, taping it shut with shaking hands, then shoved it into the hall closet as if distance could contain the malice radiating from it. My thoughts raced. This wasn't just toxic manipulation anymore. This was stalking intimidation, a direct threat to my child. Memories of my own childhood punishments flashed, being locked in the basement with the lights off, being slapped so hard my ears rang, being told I was crazy when I tried to protest. The same tactics now turned toward Lily. The fury that rose in me was no longer the trembling fear of a child, but the defiance of a mother with nothing left to lose. That night, long after I tucked Lily into bed with every light on and the front door double locked, I sat at the kitchen table documenting everything. The photos, the notes, the call. I snapped pictures, cataloged them into folders on my phone and laptop. I even recorded a video of myself recounting what happened just in case. My hands were steady now. Fear had calcified into determination. The final item I placed into the evidence folder was a journal I had hidden for years. In it were entries from my teenage self documenting the abuse, the beatings, the gaslighting. I had never shown anyone, not even Ethan, out of shame and fear. No one would believe me. But now I knew I would need every scrap of proof. My parents had declared war, and this time I would not run or cower. I would expose them. As dawn crept in through the blinds, my exhaustion was eclipsed by resolve. The doll had been their Trojan horse, their opening strike. They thought fear would paralyze me as it had when I was a girl, but they had underestimated a mother defending her child. This was the last time they would use gifts as weapons. As I sat at the kitchen table staring at the evidence, the porcelain doll sealed away in the closet, my mind betrayed me with memories I had tried to bury. It was as if opening that seam in the doll had cracked open the seams of my own past, spilling everything I had fought so hard to forget. I was no longer Amanda the mother I was, Amanda the child again, trapped in the pristine Connecticut house where every smile hid a knife. I was 8 the first time my father locked me in the basement. The infraction had been small. I forgot to put my shoes neatly by the door. He told me a house out of order means a mind out of order. His hand gripped my arm so tight the marks lingered, and he dragged me down the wooden steps, shutting off the light before slamming the door. Hours passed in darkness, my tiny body shaking, the smell of damp concrete pressing into my nose. When he finally opened the door, he acted as though it were my fault for crying. If you cannot handle discipline, Amanda, how will you ever succeed? My mother's punishments were different, surgical. She preferred words laced with sugar, but dipped in acid. Before church one Sunday, she held up a dress against me and said, "It hides your problem areas, darling, almost as if you were normal." I was 10. When I protested, she leaned close, lips brushing my ear. "Stop being dramatic. No one likes a liar." That was her favorite weapon, convincing me my reality was an invention. If I said my father hit me, she laughed. "Don't be ridiculous, you bruise so easily." If I said her words hurt, she arched a brow. "Toughen up, life isn't kind to sensitive girls." At 12, I entered the science fair with a project I had worked on for weeks, staying up late under my covers with a flashlight and notebook. When I won first prize at the district level, I ran home beaming. My father's face remained stone. "You should have aimed for the state competition," he said, unimpressed. My mother patted my hair and whispered, "Imagine how much better you'd do if you lost 10 pounds. I remember collapsing on my bed that night, clutching the ribbon that suddenly felt like a chain. By 15, I began writing everything down in a secret journal, hiding it under loose floorboards. I listed every slap, every cutting remark, every time they told me my perception was flawed. The journal was my proof that I wasn't insane. Some nights when the walls of gaslighting pressed too close, I would read my own words aloud just to remind myself that what I endured was real. When I turned 16, my parents surprised me with a car. For 1 hour, I believed it was freedom until my father handed me a thick packet of schedules. SAT prep 3 nights a week, debate club on Saturdays, volunteering at the country club on Sundays. When I begged to join the school newspaper instead, he confiscated the keys. "You're too irresponsible," he said. A week later, when I agreed to his plan, the keys mysteriously reappeared. The gift was never a gift. It was leverage. The cycle continued into college. They paid tuition, but only at the business program my father approved. Art. My true passion was forbidden. When I secretly enrolled in a literature elective, my mother made a surprise visit, stormed into my dorm, and found sketches pinned to my wall. She tore them down with a cold smile. "Is this what we pay thousands for finger painting?" The next gift she sent was a leather planner filled with pre-printed appointments, networking events, finance lectures, career counseling. A successful life requires successful planning. The note inside read, I mailed it back unopened with a single line, "I'm changing my major." Their response was swift. They cut my allowance to nothing, forcing me to work 2 campus jobs to survive. Yet even in their cruelty, they believed themselves generous. And now, decades later, the pattern repeated, but this time aimed at Lily. The doll was not merely a gift. It was their old playbook written anew. Create fear, sow doubt, establish control. I could almost hear my father's voice in the note tucked inside. "We can protect her better," the same way he claimed to protect me while breaking me. I could see my mother's smirk in every photo they had slipped inside, as if to say, "See how weak you are, Amanda. You cannot even guard your daughter." The rage that filled me was not only for the present danger, but for the years stolen from me. They had conditioned me to believe love was synonymous with fear, that loyalty meant silence, that my worth was always negotiable. They wanted Lily to inherit that legacy, to be another child molded into obedience through manipulation and terror. I looked toward her bedroom where she slept restlessly clutching her blanket, and I swore to myself that the chain would end with me. The next morning should have smelled of syrup and birthday leftovers, but instead the apartment reeked of unease. I had hardly slept, jolting awake at every creak, convinced that shadows held intruders. Lily shuffled into the kitchen, rubbing her eyes, her usual chatter muted. She kept glancing at the closet where the doll was hidden, as if its presence seeped through the door. I tried to distract her with chocolate chip waffles, but halfway through her breakfast, my phone buzzed. Private number again. My hand shook as I answered, putting it on speaker. Amanda! My father's voice boomed with a forced calmness that chilled me more than shouting. Did Lily sleep well? My stomach flipped. He knew. He had always known how to lace menace with casualness. I forced my voice steady. Stay away from us. My mother's voice slithered through Nextol sugar and venom. Darling, you are overreacting. We only want what's best for our granddaughter. She deserves stability culture education. You cannot give her what we can. Lily froze mid-bite, her fork trembling. I snapped, You broke into my home. You took photos of her while she slept. That is not love, that is stalking. My father laughed low and cold. Do not dramatize, Amanda. We simply wanted to show you that you cannot shield her forever. We have resources connections. We can provide her a real future. Unlike you. Lily's lip quivered. Why are they saying that? Mommy, she whispered. I hung up my hands clammy, my heart pounding so loudly I could barely hear. I pulled Lily into my arms, but even as I whispered reassurances, I knew my parents would not stop. This wasn't about love. It was about control. The threats escalated quickly. That afternoon, an envelope was shoved under our door. Inside were documents, printouts of custody laws, grandparent rights cases highlighted in yellow. A sticky note in my mother's handwriting read, We will not let you keep her from us. Better to cooperate. I sat at the kitchen table staring at the papers while Lily colored unicorns at her little desk, blissfully unaware of the legal jargon that could tear her life apart. Every highlighted paragraph screamed of their plan to strip me of authority, to brand me unfit to claim my daughter as theirs. My pulse pounded. They weren't just playing mind games. They were laying groundwork. The memories of my own childhood punishments surged, my father waving legal threats when teachers questioned bruises, my mother charming neighbors with perfect smiles while I sat silent with swollen lips. They had always weaponized appearances, twisting truth into lies that painted them as benevolent. And now they were preparing to do it again, this time to take Lily. That night, I called Jessica, my oldest friend, the only one who knew fragments of my past. She listened without interruption as I poured out everything, the doll, the photos, the calls, the documents. When I finished, my voice hoarse, she exhaled sharply. Amanda, this is more than manipulation. This is a campaign. They're building a case against you. Her words lodged like ice in my chest. A case. Evidence. Court. I had fought so hard to keep Lily safe from chaos, and now the chaos was battering down our door. Jessica's tone hardened. You need to fight smart. Document everything. Lawyer up. Do not let them twist this. After we hung up, I sat in the dark living room, the hum of the fridge the only sound. The porcelain doll's presence pressed against the closet door like a curse. I thought of my father's voice. We know your weaknesses. And my mother's note. Better to cooperate. Their plan was clear. Corner me into surrender or drag me into court where their wealth and polish could paint me as unstable. But what they didn't realize was that they had already gone too far. The photos, the stalking, the hidden notes sewn into a child's dress. All of it was evidence. Evidence of abuse, of harassment, of danger. For the first time, I saw their threats not just as chains but as ammunition. I wasn't a child anymore. I was a mother, and this time I wouldn't break. I checked on Lily before bed. She was curled up with her stuffed unicorn, breathing unevenly, her brow furrowed even in sleep. I brushed her hair back and whispered, I promise, baby. They will never take you from me. The words weren't just comfort for her, they were a vow. The next morning, as sunlight slanted through the blinds, I opened my laptop and began drafting a timeline. Every memory, every threat, every note documented with precision. I uploaded the photos, saved copies to external drives, emailed backups to Jessica. For years, my parents' power thrived in silence. But silence was over. By the third day, the tension in our apartment felt like a storm trapped in a jar. Every knock at the door, every shadow under the hallway light sent me spinning. Lily clung closer than ever, refusing to sleep without her bedroom lamp glowing. I knew I couldn't let this continue. My parents had turned our lives into a battleground, and if I stayed isolated, they would win. The first person I called was Jessica. She arrived that evening with a thermos of coffee and the blunt honesty only a lifelong friend can bring. She listened as I showed her the photos, the notes, the custody documents. Her jaw tightened. Amanda, this is calculated. They're building a paper trail to paint you unstable while their own abuse stays hidden. She tapped the stack of evidence I'd been collecting. This is your counterattack, but you need more than me. You need legal firepower. The next morning, I booked a consultation with Marissa Goldstein, a family lawyer Jessica recommended. Her office was filled with framed certificates and books stacked neatly along oak shelves a world away from my cramped apartment. Marissa listened carefully as I laid out the history, the hidden notes in Lily's gifts, the stalking photos, the threatening calls. I half expected her to dismiss me to say I was overreacting. Instead, her eyes sharpened. This isn't just harassment, it's parental alienation and intimidation. And you have a paper trail. That's gold in court. She leaned forward, steepling her fingers. They'll claim grandparent rights. They'll claim you're unfit. But with this evidence, we can turn it on them. We can show they are the danger. My throat tightened with relief and terror all at once. For years, no adult had ever stood between me and my parents. Now, for the first time, I wasn't alone. Marissa instructed me to keep meticulous records. Every voicemail saved, every letter scanned, every incident logged with dates and times. She promised to draft a formal letter warning my parents to cease contact, setting boundaries that would be enforceable in court. They won't like it, she said dryly. But that's the point. Leaving her office, I felt the first flicker of strength returning. My parents had counted on my silence, on my fear. But fear was giving way to fury and strategy. That night, I pulled out my teenage journal. The pages were yellowed, the handwriting uneven, but every entry was a dagger of truth. Bruises disguised as clumsiness. Groundings that lasted weeks. My mother's whispered cruelties recorded word for word. Reading it, I realized this wasn't just for me anymore. These pages could show a judge the pattern of control spanning decades. I also reached out to Miss Jenkins, the school counselor. We met in her small office, decorated with motivational posters and beanbag chairs for nervous kids. I explained the situation carefully, showing her copies of the notes. Her expression darkened. This isn't safe, Amanda. I'll flag Lily's file. Only you or approved contacts will be allowed to pick her up, and I'll keep an eye on her emotional well-being. Sometimes children reveal their worries here more easily than at home. Her support steadied me further. Each ally I gathered felt like another wall between Lily and the storm outside. The hardest step was recording my own story. One night, after Lily had gone to bed, I set up my phone on the kitchen table and pressed record. I spoke into the camera for nearly an hour, recounting everything: my childhood, abuse, my parents' manipulations, the doll, the photos, the threats. My voice cracked, my hands shook, but when I finished, I saved the file in multiple places. If anything happened to me, my truth would not vanish. Meanwhile, Jessica suggested something bold: public exposure. If they want to use reputation as a weapon, turn it on them. People like your parents thrive in the shadows. Shine a light. The idea both terrified and thrilled me. Could I really strip away their mask of respectability? But first, the evidence. I bought a fireproof safe and locked everything inside: the photos, the notes, the journal, the recordings. It was my arsenal, my shield. And every time I opened it, I reminded myself they will not win. By the end of the week, I had allies, a lawyer, a counselor, and a mountain of proof. My parents thought they were still pulling the strings, but what they didn't realize was that the stage was being set for the first time in my life, not by them, but by me. The Saturday after Lily's birthday was supposed to be quiet leftover cake cartoons, a walk in the park. Instead, my parents turned it into a battlefield. At noon, my phone lit up with an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Amanda, my father barked, "We're in town. We expect to see Lily today." My stomach dropped. "You can't just appear," I snapped. "You need to respect boundaries." His laugh was sharp, cruel. "Boundaries are for weak people. She's our granddaughter. You don't get to decide." Within an hour, there was a knock at my door, insistent, entitled. Through the peephole, I saw them. My father in a pressed suit, my mother in pearls and a silk blouse, their faces taut with self-righteousness. Lily darted toward the door, excitement warring with fear. I caught her shoulder. Stay in your room, honey. She obeyed, wide-eyed. I opened the door only enough to step outside, shutting it behind me. The hallway smelled of old carpet and dust, but the air between us was thick with confrontation. "Amanda," my mother said sweetly, "why are you hiding her? She should be with us. She deserves a better life than this dump." She gestured at the peeling paint, her nose wrinkled. My chest burned with fury. "You broke into my home, left threatening notes in her gift, took photos of her sleeping. That's not love, it's terror." Neighbors peeked out from their doors, drawn by raised voices. My father's tone grew louder, sharper. "Stop exaggerating. We gave her a doll." "You're unstable, Amanda. You always have been. Do you want the whole building to hear how unfit you are?" I raised my voice deliberately, ensuring the hallway audience caught every word. "Tell them about the photos you left in a child's toy. Tell them about sneaking into my apartment at night." A murmur rippled among the neighbors. My mother's face flushed crimson, her mask slipping. "You're twisting things. We were protecting her from your recklessness." I laughed bitterly. "Protecting her, by stalking her, by trying to convince her I'm a failure." The crowd in the hallway shifted closer. One man pulled out his phone recording. My parents noticed. My father's face twisted with rage. "You'll regret this," he hissed low enough for only me to hear. I didn't back down. "Not anymore. You've controlled me with fear my whole life. But not today. Today, everyone can see exactly who you are." I turned toward the recording neighbor. "Please make sure that video is saved. If anything happens to me or my daughter, you'll know where to start." My parents' composure cracked. My mother hissed, "This is slander." My father grabbed her arm, muttering, "We're leaving." But the damage was done. They stormed down the hallway under the gaze of my neighbor's watchful eyes, their power fractured by exposure. When I re-entered the apartment, Lily rushed into my arms. "Did Grandma and Grandpa leave?" she whispered. I nodded, holding her close. "They're gone, honey. They won't be coming back like that again." But her little body trembled, the fear too deep to vanish in a single hug. That night, after Lily finally fell asleep, I opened my laptop. My hands still shook, but this time with adrenaline, not fear. I uploaded copies of the photos and notes into a secure folder, then attached them to an email addressed to Marissa. Subject line urgent, proof of escalation. Within minutes, she responded. "Amanda, this is exactly what we need. Their behavior is intimidation and harassment. If they try to file for visitation, this will destroy their credibility. I'll draft a restraining order petition Monday." For the first time, I felt the balance shift. The confrontation in the hallway had not only exposed them to strangers, it had shown me that their power wasn't absolute. They thrived on silence, secrecy, intimidation. But once dragged into the open, they looked like what they were, predators masquerading as doting grandparents. The next morning, as Lily ate her cereal, she asked timidly, "Mommy, will they take me away?" My heart clenched, but I forced calm. "No, baby. They can't. I have people helping us now. Lawyers, friends, teachers. We're not alone." She studied me for a long moment, then nodded, some of the fear easing. "Okay. You always keep me safe." Her trust was both a weight and a fire. They had tried to fracture us, but instead they'd forged us stronger. They wanted a pawn. What they had created was an army of two. Monday morning dawned gray and heavy, as if the sky itself knew war was brewing. I dressed Lily in her favorite unicorn sweater and dropped her at school, kissing her forehead longer than usual. Then I drove straight to Marissa's office, a folder of evidence gripped so tightly in my hands the edges cut into my palms. Marissa greeted me with calm efficiency. She spread the photos, the notes, the threatening documents across her desk like puzzle pieces. "Amanda, this is more than enough," she said firmly. "We'll file for a protective order today." She tapped one of the photos of Lily sleeping. "Judges hate this kind of thing. It screams danger." The paperwork felt endless, but with every signature I felt lighter. Each line was a barrier, a wall to keep my parents out. Marissa explained the process: emergency restraining order first, followed by a hearing within 2 weeks. If granted, my parents would be legally barred from contacting us, coming near Lily's school, or stepping foot on my property. They could try to contest it, but the burden would be theirs. For once, the power would tilt my way. I swallowed hard. What if they fight back with lawyers? Marissa smiled grimly. They probably will, but money doesn't erase facts, and you have something better truth documented in black and white. That afternoon, she filed the petition. Within hours, I had temporary protection in place. The sheriff's deputy personally delivered the order to my parents' hotel. I imagined their faces as they read the words, "Stay 500 feet away from Amanda Miller and Lily Miller. No calls, no gifts, no contact." My father's fury, my mother's shrill disbelief. It was almost enough to make me smile. Almost. But the war wasn't over. That evening, I received an email from an unfamiliar address. The subject line read, "You can't silence family." My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a scanned letter from my parents' attorney full of pomp and legal threats. They intended to pursue grandparent visitation rights, claiming I was unfit and that Lily's emotional well-being depended on their presence. Attached was a dossier of carefully curated photos me as a teenager, looking sullen old report cards, even screenshots from Ethan's Facebook claiming I was unstable. For a moment, panic threatened to choke me, but then I remembered Marissa's words. Money doesn't erase facts. I forwarded the entire email to her. 10 minutes later, she called. "This is Smoke and Mirrors, Amanda. They're trying to intimidate you. But the restraining order changes everything. If they try to push visitation, we'll counter with evidence of harassment. Judges won't side with abusers masquerading as grandparents." I exhaled, my chest loosening. For the first time, I wasn't reacting. I was preparing. Over the next week, I became relentless. I gathered affidavits from neighbors who had witnessed the hallway confrontation, including the man with the video. He happily handed me a copy, shaking his head. "Those two were unhinged," he said. "Any judge who sees this will throw them out." Miss Jenkins from Lily's school wrote a statement confirming the psychological toll their actions had on Lily. Even Jessica recorded her testimony about the threatening calls she had overheard on speaker. The evidence pile grew higher. My parents had underestimated me. They thought I would crumble, but instead I was building a fortress. Still, the nights were hard. I lay awake listening to every creak, my heart pounding at phantom footsteps. Lily sometimes woke crying, whispering, "Mommy, don't let them take me." I would hold her close, promising over and over that she was safe. And each promise fueled my determination. Finally, the court date arrived. The morning air was crisp, the courthouse looming like a monument to everything I feared and everything I fought for. Marissa walked beside me, her presence steady. Inside the hearing room smelled of old wood and disinfectant. My parents sat across the aisle, immaculate as ever, my father in a navy suit, my mother in pearls. They didn't look at me. They didn't need to. Their disdain radiated across the room. But this time, I wasn't the trembling child they remembered. I had documents, witnesses, a lawyer. I had truth. As the judge called the case, my heart steadied. The power shift was no longer theoretical. It was happening here and now. My parents had spent a lifetime convincing me I was weak. Today, I would prove them wrong. The courtroom was colder than I expected, the air conditioning blasting despite the November chill outside. I sat at the petitioner's table with Marissa, my lawyer, while my parents sat across from us, their attorney polished and smirking as if victory was inevitable. My father's jaw was clenched. My mother's pearls gleamed under the fluorescent lights. They looked like the perfect grandparents until you knew the truth. The judge, a stern woman with steel gray hair, called the hearing to order. She explained this was a petition for a restraining order and a response motion for visitation rights. Her voice was calm, measured, but each word carried weight. I clasped my hands tightly, willing myself not to shake. This was the battle that would decide everything. Their attorney began with theatrics. He painted a picture of loving grandparents unjustly cut off from their granddaughter. He spoke of family bonds heritage and emotional harm caused by my refusal to let them visit. He implied I was unstable, bringing up my divorce, my freelance work, even a late rent payment once reported in public records. My parents nodded solemnly, playing the part of victims. But then it was Marissa's turn. She rose with quiet authority and began laying out the evidence like knives on a table. She showed the judge the porcelain doll and the seams stuffed with notes. She held up the photographs, Lily sleeping, Lily walking to school, and the room grew still. Even the bailiff shifted uncomfortably. "This is not love," Marissa declared. This is surveillance, harassment, emotional abuse." Gasps rippled when she played the voicemail of my father's voice. "You can't keep us away forever. You'll regret it." The judge's eyes narrowed. My mother whispered furiously to their lawyer, her composure cracking. Then came the witnesses. The neighbor who recorded the hallway confrontation testified, showing the video of my father's shouting my mother, sneering at our dump. The judge leaned forward, expression grim. Miss Jenkins from Lily's school testified about the note's psychological impact, confirming Lily had expressed fear of her grandparents. Jessica testified about overhearing the threatening calls, her voice shaking with anger as she recounted my panic. Finally, Marissa invited me to the stand. My legs felt like lead, but I walked steadily, placing my hand on the Bible to swear in. I told the truth. I described my childhood, the basement punishments, the constant gaslighting, the manipulation disguised as gifts. My throat tightened, but I pressed on because this time my story wasn't about my pain, it was about Lily's safety. I told the judge about finding the doll, about Lily whispering, "Mom, help me," about the terror in her eyes. When I finished, the judge sat silently for a long moment studying my parents. My father's face was red, his fists clenched on the table. My mother looked pale, her smile gone, replaced by tight-lipped fury. Finally, the judge spoke. "Mr. and Mrs. Patterson, this court does not tolerate harassment, intimidation, or attempts to alienate a child from her parent. The evidence presented is overwhelming." She turned to me. "Ms. Miller, your petition for a restraining order is granted. Effective immediately. Charles and Margaret Patterson are prohibited from contacting you or your daughter in any form for a period of 3 years." My breath caught. Relief flooded me, hot and dizzying. The judge continued addressing their motion. "As for the request for grandparent visitation, it is hereby denied. The court finds that the Pattersons' behavior poses a clear risk of emotional harm to the child. Further attempts to circumvent this order will result in criminal charges." The gavel came down with a sharp crack. My parents erupted. My father slammed his palm on the table, shouting, "This is a farce! You can't take our granddaughter from us!" My mother sobbed dramatically, wailing, "Amanda, you'll regret this when she grows up hating you." The bailiff stepped forward sternly, ordering them out. I sat, frozen tears streaming silently. For the first time, someone in authority had not only believed me, but protected me. The little girl who had once cowered in a dark basement was vindicated. As we left the courthouse, Marissa squeezed my shoulder. "You did it, Amanda. You broke the cycle." Outside, the cold wind slapped my cheeks, but it felt cleansing, like a baptism into freedom. Jessica was waiting by the steps with Lily, who ran into my arms, her small body warm and safe. "Did we win, Mommy?" she asked, eyes wide. I kissed her hair. "Yes, baby, we won." The weeks after the courtroom showdown felt like stepping into sunlight after years in a cellar. For the first time, the phone was silent. No private numbers, no threats, no packages at the door. The silence wasn't just absence, it was freedom. Lily and I could breathe again. The first night after the order, she slept with her door closed for the first time since the doll arrived. I stood outside for a long while, listening to her steady breathing. When morning came, she bounded into the kitchen, eyes bright, and asked for pancakes. The shadows under her eyes were gone. Seeing her laugh again unburdened was more powerful than any gavel strike. I knew healing wouldn't be instant. Trauma lingers like smoke even after the fire is out. But I was determined to rebuild not just a home, but a life that could never be invaded again. Step 1 was security. I installed a video doorbell, replaced locks, even added an alarm system. Lily watched with fascination as the technician worked, asking if the cameras meant bad people can't sneak in anymore. "Yes," I told her firmly. "From now on, no one gets in without our say." Step 2 was community. For too long, I had lived like a fugitive from my own family, isolated and ashamed. Now I leaned into the people who had stood by me. Jessica and her family came over every Sunday for dinner. Lily played with their kids while we adults shared stories, laughter, and sometimes tears. The warmth of chosen family filled the spaces blood had poisoned. Miss Jenkins checked in on Lily at school, reporting that she was adjusting well. She even praised Lily for standing up to a classmate who tried to boss her around. "Real friends don't make you feel small," Lily had told the girl, echoing lessons I'd worked so hard to teach. Pride swelled in my chest. She was learning boundaries far younger than I had. Step 3 was myself. For years, I'd been defined by survival. Now, I wanted to grow. I began regular therapy with Dr. Levine, who guided me through unpacking years of gaslighting. We worked on rebuilding my self-trust, learning that my perception was valid, my instincts trustworthy. Slowly, the voice in my head that sounded like my mother, critical cutting, grew quieter. I even began painting again. One Saturday, I cleared a corner of the living room, set up an easel, and dipped a brush into bright acrylics. The smell of paint brought back the memory of college days when I had dared to dream outside my father's spreadsheets. This time, there was no one to tear the canvas down. Lily joined me, splattering colors onto her own paper. Together, we made a mess of joy. And yet, the past lingered. Some nights I still jolted awake, convinced I heard footsteps in the hall. Some afternoons, Lily asked if Grandma and Grandpa still hated us. Each time I reminded her of the truth: love is not supposed to hurt. Family is not supposed to scare you. She nodded slowly, absorbing a lesson it had taken me decades to learn. The biggest shift came unexpectedly. One evening, while brushing her teeth, Lily looked at me in the mirror and said, "You always keep me safe, Mommy. I don't need anyone else." Tears filled my eyes. For so long, my parents had convinced me I wasn't enough. Hearing my daughter's faith in me shattered the last remnants of their lies. Financially, life was still tight. Freelance work came in bursts, some months heavier than others. But I no longer feared scarcity the way I once did because I'd survived far worse. And each project I completed felt like another brick in the life I was building on my own terms. 6 months after the court ruling, I received a letter from my parents' attorney. It was brief. The Pattersons will not be pursuing further visitation at this time. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just retreat. For a moment, I felt the old ache. Why couldn't they ever simply love me? But then I looked at Lily sprawled on the floor coloring and realized I didn't need their love. I had hers. That was enough. To mark the anniversary of the restraining order, Jessica suggested we celebrate. We baked a cake this time, not for survival, but for victory. Lily decorated it with frosting hearts, giggling as she licked the spoon. When we cut into it, I felt something I hadn't in years: peace. The doll remained locked in the safe, preserved as evidence. Sometimes I thought of burning it, but then I realized it had become a symbol. What they meant for fear had become the proof of my strength. One day when Lily is older, I'll show her the case file, the court order, the truth. Not to burden her, but to show her what survival and courage look like. I am not naive. I know healing is a journey, not a destination. But as I tucked Lily into bed that night, she whispered, "You're my hero, Mommy." And in that moment, I knew we were not just survivors. We were free. 1 year later, the world looked different. The seasons had cycled, leaves had fallen and bloomed again, and our lives had quietly blossomed too. The shadows that once clung to every corner of my apartment had loosened their grip. Lily was 9 now, taller, braver, more certain of herself. I was stronger too, though my scars remained like faint lines under the skin, a reminder, not a sentence. The restraining order still stood like a wall between us and my parents. They had not challenged it again. Occasionally, I heard rumors through distant relatives that they were furious that they painted me as ungrateful, even delusional, but their words no longer pierced me. They were echoes bouncing off the boundaries I had built. What once felt like chains now felt like nothing more than noise carried by the wind. Our days filled with new rituals. Saturday mornings meant soccer games, Lily racing across the field with a grin that could split the clouds. Sunday evenings meant dinners with Jessica's family, laughter spilling louder than any of the hushed, critical conversations of my childhood table. And late nights sometimes meant painting sessions, Lily and I, side by side, splattering colors without rules, creating joy where once there had only been fear. But healing was not just about new beginnings. It was about rewriting old lessons. I had grown up believing love came with strings, that affection was earned through obedience, that family meant ownership. Now, every day with Lily, I worked to show her the truth that love is unconditional, that respect is mutual, that family is chosen by actions, not forced by blood. One evening, as we walked home under a sky streaked with pink and gold, Lily asked Mommy, "Do you think Grandma and Grandpa will ever change?" The question stopped me. For a moment, the old ache stirred the child inside me, still longing for her parents' approval. But then, I looked at my daughter's trusting face and found my answer. Maybe, I said softly, but it's not our job to wait for them. It's our job to live happy, safe, and free. If they change, that's their journey. Ours is already moving forward. She nodded satisfied and skipped ahead, her laughter rising above the hum of traffic. The pink porcelain doll still sat in the safe untouched since the trial. Sometimes I wondered if keeping it meant I was holding on too tightly to the past, but every time I considered throwing it away, I stopped. It wasn't just an object. It was a relic of survival, a testament to how far we had come. One day, I would show it to Lily as proof of the war we fought together and how real love, had won. I also found myself speaking more openly. When a colleague mentioned a toxic relative, I told my story. When another single mom at school confessed her parents criticized her constantly, I shared my own experience, and I watched their shoulders relax, their eyes widen with relief. My words gave them permission to believe their instincts, to set their own boundaries. For years, silence had been my prison. Now, truth was my freedom and my gift to others. On the anniversary of the court ruling, I wrote a letter I never intended to send. You taught me fear, but I taught my daughter strength. You gave me chains, but I gave her wings. You tried to rewrite our story, but I ended yours in court. You lost not because of the judge's gavel, but because you mistook control for love. And love, the real kind, is something you never understood. After finishing, I placed the letter in the safe with the doll. It belonged there with the evidence, with the past locked away from the present we were building. Life was not perfect. Money was still tight some nights, still restless, some scars still raw. But perfection was never the goal. Peace was. And peace, I realized, is not given. It is claimed, fought for, defended. To those who hear my story, especially those who carry the weight of toxic families, I want you to know you are not crazy. You are not ungrateful. You are not wrong for wanting safety, for demanding respect, for cutting ties when ties are strangling you. Blood may connect us, but love is proven by how we are treated. If your family uses fear, silence, or control to hold you, that is not love. I fought back not just for myself, but for my daughter, and the victory was not the court order, though, that mattered. The real victory was watching Lily twirl on a soccer field, laugh at Sunday dinners, sleep peacefully without whispering, "Mom, help me." That is justice. That is freedom. So I leave you with this. Never let anyone convince you that boundaries are betrayal. Boundaries are love. Love for yourself. Love for your children. Love for the life you deserve. The pink doll, the hidden notes, the gaslighting, they were all meant to break me. Instead, they became the fire that forged me into someone who would never let history repeat itself. And when Lily looks at me with eyes full of trust and says, "You always keep me safe, Mommy," I know the truth. The cycle is broken. The future is ours.